more Daniel Jones. Let's talk about the Vikings who traveled to MetLife to give the Giants a royal ass kicking.
Giants are on the board with 11:16 to go here in the third.
All right. The Giants lose to the Minnesota Vikings 28-6, down 14-3 at the half in this one. Shout out to Andrew Phillips. I think if anybody deserves a game ball on the defensive side of the ball outside of Dexter Lawrence, it will go to Andrew Phillips. Had the early forced fumble in this one. The Giants obviously do what they do and settled for a field goal, and you knew it was doomsday from that point on. The Giants were the only team this weekend to not score double-digit points. Why?
Wait, Carolina scored double-digit points?
I think so. You might want to look it up, but I saw this statistic running around on social media that the Giants were the only team that didn't score 10 or more points. Shout out to Ralph Fletch 7515 who left a comment on our latest Giant overreaction video, I believe it was, or it might have been the Daniel Jones video. Talked about 7 teams gave up 21 points this week and still won. So when you look at the New York Giants 28-6 score, 7 of those came on a pick 6 from Daniel Jones to Andrew Van Ginkel. And, that would have been 21 right there. And I thought a lot of people are, pointing the finger at this defense today. And I get it. They didn't play the best games. But, I think that they did enough to be able to at least keep the Giants in it if the offense could have output any type of offense. But they only really accounted for 3 points. Andrew Phillips set them up for that field goal. Daniel Jones ends up getting tackled by Andrew Van Ginkel trying to squeak his way into the end zone. I mean, just a great, shoestring type of tackle from around the waist. But it was a tough one here, man. First quarter penalties definitely hurt the New York Giants. Big delay of game, 12 men in the huddle, false start, holding on Wan'Dale Robinson. And it was just, offensively, one of the poorest games. It looked like we had a backup quarterback in there. It really felt like a Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm type of game from the Giants because we're expecting Daniel Jones to be more of the quarterback that he was in 2022, and he's picked up right where he left off. The Giants were 0 for 2 in the red zone, about 50% on third down, just under it actually. 7 of 18, 9 penalties for 95 yards, 2 turnovers, just 74 yards rushing as a team. I had a dude that I quote tweeted one of his tweets where he said, watch, by the time we get to Sunday, you'll realize that Devin Singletary will make you forget about the other number 26 that we had. Definitely not the case with the way that things panned out on Friday night with the Philadelphia Eagles and the way that things panned out at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday for the Giants. And we talked about, on the preview show how this is not that same Vikings defense. And I think a lot of Giants fans who don't really watch a lot of football outside of their own market thought that, this is going to be a Vikings defense that we're going to be able to score some points. I saw people saying like, oh, man, Sam Darnold, we're going to be able to kill him, and all of these different takes that just sounded like people have not been up to date with watching what the Minnesota Vikings have done. I did a lot of research when we did the preview show, and I talked about a lot of players during that preview show, and it's just crazy that, every player I mentioned had a big play in this game for the Minnesota Vikings defense. Ivan Pace Jr. was talking a bunch of smack before the game, but it was realistic type of shit talk. I liked it. A lot of people kind of were like, oh, he's throwing shade at the offense, blah, 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 blah. He's going to see on Sunday. Ivan Pace was out there making play after play after play from the linebacker position. Blake Cashman in the backfield the entire game. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's getting paid about the same amount of money as Bobby Okereke, which I want to say is right around $10 million a year. That dude, when you talk about a linebacker, somebody who can get after the quarterback from a productivity, production, meets financial standpoint, that is as good as it gets. He is the kind of player that I want. And I was telling some homies today in our group chat on Twitter, them white boy linebackers, bro, they ain't no white corners, right? God has an interesting way of having balance in the world, right? It's like you can't have too much sweets, you'll get too many cavities. It's like sweet, sour, black, white, yin, yang, right? And he really blessed the Caucasians with the linebacker position.
Do you want to know what I think of when I think of linebacker and Caucasian?
Can I take a guess?
Take a guess.
I was going to say Lattimore from the program.
That to me is like the prototype white linebacker.
Yes,
that's
bro.
AJ Hawk. That's Brian Cushing. That's that's who I think of. I think of that
Brian Urlacher. There's so many of them, bro. But they're so tough, and they're willing to put their bodies on the line. They don't give a shit. Whereas when you look at like some of these like finesse, speed, edge rushers, the Kayvon Thibodeaux, the Brian Burns, it's like everything looks all sleek, but they don't want to get in the trenches for real, for real. So shout out to Andrew Van Ginkel, man. I thought on their defense, he made just play after play after play. Harrison Smith had the interception, a couple of fantastic tackles in open field as well. Stephon Gilmore playing the trail technique. I thought they did a really good job of keeping their corners underneath the routes, but then also having their safeties right over top. And Brian Flores really like, you know, he in the chess game of defense versus offense, he really took Brian Dable to school in this one, I felt like. And then their rookie, Dallas Turner, he got a sack in this game, man. Like, all these guys I talked about, and we talked about Brian Flores' defense going from 31st to 16th last year before they got in all their personnel and whatnot. Now, I'm going to come back and talk about the defense. I have to just shift to Daniel Jones, right? Because, like, what would Awthentik and the Beard be without Awthentik talking about Daniel Jones, right? It would just be the Beard and the Commanders. You know, so we got to talk about it just a little bit. Let's just run through some of the numbers we talked about in the Giant overreaction. A couple of added numbers as well. Giants go 3 and out on the first drive. Daniel Jones in the first half, 8 for 16 for 55 yards. Terrible, terrible quarterback rating. He was 21 of 42, I believe it was. These numbers I have were right when I turned the game off before the Bleacher Report stream. I think he was 21 of 42 for 186 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The way that he was inaccurate all day, like some of the layup throws, he had one where Theo Johnson was coming across the middle. He had enough time to get rid of the ball. A little bit of pressure he's kind of starting to sense coming down the interior of the offensive line. He just dirts the ball, and it's behind him. I just don't understand it.
The ball.
Patrick ended up texting me, and he said, man, different day, different year, same damn quarterback. And I totally feel him on that. You had the pick 6 to Andrew Van Ginkel, which a lot of people that I trust on Twitter that talk ball, a lot of people didn't like the play call or the formation that they ran. They had like, for me, this kind of terminology is a little bit over my head because we didn't run these oop-de-oop type offenses when I played ball, right? Like, they had a bunch of 3 receivers to the right, and then they had Wan'Dale Robinson split out all the way on the outside. So you had a little bunch of 3 to the right in the slot position kind of, and then Wan'Dale all the way out on the outside. They motioned him in, not past the 3 bunch wide receivers, and then tried to run a bubble screen to him. Daniel Jones has lost velocity, y'all. I think that the neck injury has definitely taken a toll on him because ever since that game in Miami where he got his neck crunched up by Andrew Van Ginkel, former Miami Dolphin, I just feel like his velocity on his throws is not the same. He has more inconsistencies within his accuracy, and I just don't think he's the same quarterback. He's a little bit shell-shocked. He's in the pocket, and he's antsy when he's got clean pockets, and I just don't understand it. You had the red zone interception where they run a cover 2. It might have been a cover 2 man type of defense. I couldn't really tell if it was cover 2 man or zone. I couldn't see the outside when I was taking notes on it. But it's not that bad of a read. It's really not that bad of a read. Like, he has a linebacker playing underneath coverage, and then he has the safety over the top, which is Harrison Smith. And there's a window literally from the goalpost to about the hash that's just wide open. He throws it to the farthest portion of the inside. It's just an inaccurate throw. Kurt Warner, I tagged Kurt Warner on a couple of throws today, and Dan Orlovsky and a few others, and Kurt Warner jumped in and started talking with us on Twitter. And I was like, man, shout out to Kurt Warner for doing that. He don't got to, take time out his day to respond to a bunch of people on Twitter talking football. But he pretty much said the same thing. He was just like, there's so much room in that window to throw the ball, and instead you throw it to the inside. I understand that possession was late in the game, and the Giants were the game was out of reach at that point. But to me, those are 2 series, right, where it's +7, -7 for the Giants. Like, if Daniel Jones can convert there and put the ball in the end zone, you're going to get the Giants 7 more points on the scoreboard. And if he doesn't throw the pick 6 to Andrew Van Ginkel, you're taking the 7 off the board for the Minnesota Vikings. And now that game just gets much closer. Mm-hmm. On throws 10 or more yards down the field, Daniel Jones was 4 of 9 for 69 yards. He had 26 throws that were 10 yards or less. And I understand that the Giants, they want to take the top off of these defenses. That's what they've shown all preseason in the joint practices with the Detroit Lions, with the New York Jets, in these preseason games with the Houston Texans. And I warned people, when you saw Daniel Jones in the first-team offense go up against Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, the starting DBs out there, Daniel Jones had like 2 completions on like 10 attempts or something. And as soon as they removed those guys out of the game, and they put in the backups, then Daniel Jones starts to have success. And I say, that's something that you need to keep your eyes on. Like, people are like, it's just preseason. But like when your quarterback cannot excel against top tier corners in the NFL, what do you think is going to happen in the regular season? You're going to see some of that same stuff. His average depth of target was 5 yards down the field. His ADOT from a clean pocket was less. 4.7 when you're throwing from a clean pocket. He was pressured on damn near half of his throws. So I think that he's creating pressures, and that's the statistic that I haven't looked into yet. But 25% of his pressures turned into sacks. Now, a lot of people were pointing the finger at Brian Dable's play calling, pointing the finger at these wide receivers not getting separation. We've heard that one before, right? People were pointing the finger at the defense as well, saying, oh, man, they ran all over our defense, and that didn't give us a chance to win this game. But to me, the separation was something that really stood out to me. And I think you'll appreciate this stat because your quarterback is on this list as well. Average yards of separation across the NFL, top 7 quarterbacks this weekend. Lamar Jackson, number 1 at 4.9 yards. Jaden Daniels, number 2 at 4.7 yards. Josh Allen, number 3 at 4.6. Daniel Jones, number 4 at 4.4. The other 3 quarterbacks were Gardner Minshew, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. So that goes to show you that there's room to make these throws. It makes me think about one of the there was a backside route from Malik Neighbors where he ran a deep comeback route. Clean as a pocket gonna get. And Daniel Jones checking down. The difference that I'm noticing this year, Daniel Jones has always been a bit late when it comes to checking down and when it comes to just reading the field in general. And I think that's one thing that he's not going to be able to clean up really. But now you add on that post-neck injury, he's been inaccurate on the checkdowns. You're missing 4 and 5 yard throws, man. You're dirting balls. Like, he looking like me on the golf course when I'm not in the fairway, bro. And that is unacceptable. Now, Janoris Jenkins came out and he talked about it. He called Daniel Jones like Doo-Doo Jones with like 5 or 6 O's every time he said do. It was like Doo-Doo Jones, right? And then he said, it's the quarterback, not the organization. I had a couple little numbers from this. 1 of 7 in his last 8 games. I really think that these injuries are taking their toll on Daniel Jones. And not saying he was like this world beater type of quarterback, but I think that even from where he was, which was somewhere around being an average quarterback, he has stepped back. And as I described this on the Giant Overreaction, Daniel Jones was overdrafted, overpaid, and he's in way over his head. And before we talk about the defense, I just want to know what you saw in this game from your Commander's lens and what you thought about the entire performance from the Giants, wherever you want to go with it.
I thought that it was disappointing because it reminded me a lot of the team last year. The way the game started, they got the fumble. Like, you're like, okay, we're cooking. We're at home. All the OGs are here. And you failed to really capitalize on it. And I talked about this with the Commanders, right? When you're a team like the Commanders, like the Giants, and most of the season, the team on the other side that you're playing is going to be better than you. You can't make mistakes, and you have to capitalize on opportunities. The Giants failed to do both of those things in this game. And you talked about pointing the finger, right? You can point the finger in so many different places. Like that's why football is the greatest team sport in the world, right? Because it takes so many different pieces to come together for things to work the right way. And obviously, it's like a chessboard where some pieces are more important than other pieces. And the quarterback position is very important. And Daniel Jones cannot find a rhythm. You talked about this on the overreaction.
Glad you're bringing that up.
The Forrest Gump, analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people think I feel like people don't really understand when we talk about stuff like that, right? It's not necessarily a look thing, right? It's not about how he looks like he doesn't look cool. It's a rhythm. It's a feel. Yeah. It's hard to describe. It's like when you're in the zone and you're firing on all cylinders, you just move a little different. It's like all those movie scenes where like people kind of like see things in slow motion when everything is really going fast around them. Mm-hmm. And when a quarterback is on top of their game, that's how they're seeing the field. With Daniel Jones, it's like there's none of that is there. He could be like, any other quarterback in his situation on a play. You talked about one of them where there's like, it's a clean pocket, but he's reacting as if the pocket is not clean. Right.
He ran into about 2 or 3 sacks in this game where
that was
all
one
he
of
had
the
to do was
things
kind of maneuver a little bit, you know, and he just like he sees it, he panics, he's thinking last year I got to take off and run, and he's taking some boneheaded sacks. I would compare your analogy to golf. You know, when you get out there and you play on a golf course with people who are like, you know, I'm not talking like real golfers, but just people who like golf, you know, casually and go out there, you can just see that certain people just have a natural knack to swing the club. Like it's a swag thing. I hate to say that, but like that's the best way to describe it. It's like, and with football, I think it's the same thing. Now, in football, though, there are guys that struggle that still have that thing. Like, I think a guy like Malik Willis checks the box when you think about, like, look at how swift he runs, agility, everything. He's got speed. He's got all that. Justin Fields is the same way, but they still struggle on the field. It's rare that you're going to see a guy that doesn't have a natural feel for the game have a lot of success, you know, in the National Football League. I'm trying to think of a quarterback that was like that, like where you're like, man, Phillip Rivers, perfect example. Phillip Rivers is a guy who it didn't look right, but he was effective. You know, ball coming out all sideways and stuff like that. But like, hey, man, it's accurate. It's working. We're not going to complain about it. And I think that's the best case scenario that you could hope for a guy like Daniel Jones. But it's just not working for him here in New York. And I honestly think that injury has definitely taken its toll. And Daniel Jones looks uninvested in football. He looks like, I don't want to say he looks like he doesn't care, but he looks like it's bothering him, man. It's like going to work is not fun for Daniel Jones anymore. You come out of that locker room an hour after the game and these fans are waiting for you out there to boo you and heckle you and telling you, give me $1 million and screaming at you and all this shit. It's not easy, but that's why they pay you to do it. But he just doesn't look like he's enjoying the game, you know, and funny. I know winning will solve that.
It's funny because, you know, this game was against Sam Darnold. And I think a lot of people thought about that way about Sam Darnold towards the end of his tenure in the New York Jets organization.
Yeah.
And, you know, Sam Darnold, he looked real comfortable. And, you know, a lot of that, I think you gave really good credit to the coaching staff, both offensively and defensively for the Minnesota Vikings, because their game plan felt like they knew what their weaknesses were, and they had a game plan to combat their own weaknesses.
Yeah.
Defensively especially. And I thought that they did a really good job with that. And, I mean, the offensive line was bad for the New York Giants, and you talked about it, though.
I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was bad.
Okay, that's why I was it wasn't necessarily bad, right? But it wasn't good. And I guess we'll give some more credit to Minnesota then, because Minnesota nobody had more quarterback pressures in the National Football League in Week 1 than the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings had 15 quarterback pressures.
How the pressures were created, because when I looked at the PFF grades at a glance, like it looked like everybody had a pretty decent game. The question marks would be at right guard, obviously, but like Jermaine Illuminor had a damn good game. Andrew Thomas, his PFF grade was like a 96 or something.
So we're talking Daniel Jones stepping into these sacks.
I mean, that's how I saw it. I didn't see, you know, Giants fans are extremely used to like Evan Neal just like, hey man, go ahead, man. There's my quarterback. Go get him. And you didn't see that in this game. Daniel Jones didn't even look like he had any moments where it was like, as soon as he said hike, he had pressure in his face.
Yeah,
that was
I'll
very
give you
rare.
that. There was not a lot of that. But
JMS stepped up in this game and played pretty decent, I thought, as well. You know, to me, a lot of it was Daniel Jones. And honestly, the pressure numbers, I want to cross-reference them with Pro Football Reference, because they look a little bit worse than what I saw. I watched the game 3 times already now. I watched it live, charted every throw from the quarterback position, which is on our YouTube if you want to check it out. Then I watched the condensed version, and then I watched the All-22 today. And, bro, watching the All-22 was just, like, so disheartening, man. Like, there are moments where Daniel Jones has opportunities. There's one point in this game where we got backed up on a holding penalty, and it was 2nd and 26, and you have Theo Johnson running like a little skinny post down the middle of the field, and, man, you could have got like a 15-yard chunk easy if you throw this ball in time. He pats the ball, kind of panics. Then he tries to dump it off to Wan'Dale Robinson. The ball's in the dirt. And I just think he was scared to take the intermediate stuff there. The Vikings did a really good job of running cover 2. We talked about them being the team that ran cover 2 the most out of any team in the NFL last season. And it's a mixed bag of a bunch of things. I think Brian Dable thought that Brian Flores was going to send more blitz. When in return, they really just stayed back, man. You saw a lot of times where they had 7 players in coverage and made things really tough when Brian Dable's running a lot of 12 personnel. I talked about this last year a ton, Beard, where I thought the Giants would run way more 12 personnel with Darren Waller and with Bellinger, and they just didn't do it last year. And it seems like the game plan this year was to run, at least week one, to run a ton of 12 personnel. They ran that a lot. And if you look at the big play, the biggest play of the day that we got to Malik Neighbors, the 25-yarder where Malik, he ran like a little, he got an inside release on Stephon Gilmore. They ran a clear out from the slot with Darius Slayton. And then Malik Neighbors ran a deep comeback. They ran that same play. I put it on Twitter today if y'all want to check it out. They ran that same play almost back-to-back. They ran it on first down. Then on second down, they tried to run a quick little they ran Malik Neighbors in motion and tried to give him a bubble screen. It got hit in the backfield. He dropped the ball, actually, as well. And then they went right back to the same play. Same formation and everything. Personnel, identical, except they had Malik Neighbors on the opposite side to start, and the pre-snap motion was a little bit different. So you can tell that Brian Daboll thought that Brian Flores was going to bring a lot more blitz, try to put a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones, force him to get the ball out quick, when instead he just kept everything in front, had his corners playing a lot of cover two man, trail technique, and that really presented a lot of problems for Daniel Jones. There was no deep shot in this entire game.
And no adjustment either based upon that defense that they were showing, the lack of blitzing. Like, I think so. I guess that go all the way back to my first statement. It's like, there's a lot of blame to be going around. I mean, obviously in this situation with, if we're nitpicking a little bit, obviously if we're blaming everybody, but you blame Daniel Jones because he's the quarterback. That's what you do. You blame the quarterback when they play that bad, and everybody else around them isn't necessarily playing bad. It's funny how fans will blame the separation of the wide receivers and stuff like that, right? But all off season, this is the best set of weapons that Daniel Jones has ever had. We got Malik Neighbors. It doesn't matter what what happens. Neighbors will make plays happen, like that sort of situation. And it just kind of goes. The running back situation was interesting too. So only 10 carries for Singletary. What was the rest of the backfield? How many times did they?
Tracy had a couple. Eric Gray had just 2 carries on the day.
So under 20 total carries, I'd imagine.
Running game wasn't working. Get down on the scoreboard like that, at 14-3 at the half, you can still run the ball. But then once the Vikings come out and they score on their second drive and whatnot, it's tough at that point. Now you're down, 3 scores. You got to find a way to get this ball in the end zone. And we were just outmatched in the coaching department. I will give Brian Flores his credit. And, these two coaches have history together in New England and whatnot. You can't forget that Bill Belichick texted Brian Flores and said, "Hey, man, congratulations on getting the New York Giants job." When Brian Daboll actually got it, he texted the wrong Brian, right? So, I'm sure there was a little bit of spite there. Brian Flores was in the media already for the comments that Tua made on that podcast and whatnot, saying, pretty much Brian Flores was an asshole. But, to get back to the point you said where there was a lot of blame to go around, I think that each unit definitely had their issues, but there was no position group or position that really made it where the Giants had no chance except the quarterback position.
100% agree with that.
I hate to do that, right? I don't want to pile on Daniel Jones, but I do like to be critical and assess the game the way that it should be. I can't go without talking about this defense. The defense in this game was terrible as well, but they still at least gave the Giants an opportunity to be able to stick in the game if the offense could have scored some points. We talked about the importance of getting pressure on Sam Darnold in this one, and they just could not get pressure on him outside of the first drive of the game. They also had trouble stopping the run. I've had my big question marks about Brian Burns and bringing him in. I know a lot of people are hype about Brian Burns, and I try to cater to the fan base at least a little bit. I understand that, you don't want to tune into somebody that, right when you make a splash signing or trade for a guy like Brian Burns.
I hate it.
Awthentik's man, I don't like that shit, man. I don't know about this guy. He can't stop the run, man. He's loopy on the outside, and he doesn't really have any inside moves, but that is just the fact of what it is. And I think in this game, it really showed up. But we talked about the Minnesota Vikings bringing back the exact same offensive line that they had last year, led by Darisaw, who is an excellent left tackle, and he was really taking care of business over there with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. Now, I got to talk about some pass rush win rate percentages here because it was really bad. Dexter Lawrence, 50% pass rush win rate. That's a tongue twister. I got to really slow down when I say that.
That's a Wookiee wide receiver one.
It's a Wookiee wide receiver for sure. But that's what you expect out of Dexter Lawrence. He also had 6 pressures, 5 hurries, one quarterback sack.
That's a good game.
Really, that's what you're going to get out of him every time. Now, DJ Davidson, a guy who, really wasn't expected to do too much in this game, probably had the second best game of all the players on the defensive front. He had 2 pressures, 2 hurries, and he also had a pass rush win rate of 22%. But Kayvon and Brian Burns, both of them under 6% pass rush win rate. Burns had a 5.6% pass rush win rate, and Kayvon Thibodeau had a 5% pass rush win rate. Kayvon Thibodeau went the entire game. No tackle, man. And I talked about this on the overreaction.
Couldn't even answer the question after the game either.
Bro, we gonna get to that. But could you imagine, right? Like you playing middle linebacker for the Titans, right?
The Albert Einstein Titans, right?
Right.
Okay, because that's what I did. Right? I played middle linebacker.
So you're playing middle linebacker for the Titans, right? You got ready for the game. You wristband up, taped every finger like you used to do back in the day. You got the cowboy collar, the neck roll, and everything, right? And you go out there and you play like 45 snaps, and you don't even get a tackle.
That's a problem.
That's a problem,
that's
bro.
A problem. You got to at least get one.
You got to get one good tackle.
I mean, we're talking 90 plays. Like, there's got to be the percentages are usually in your favor.
Yo, something, bro. But like, so now in return, everybody in like the Giants Twitter community is like, especially after the interview that you just brought up, because Kayvon Thibodeau, he's like, can we get another question? And like, it's like, bro, just be a professional, man. I understand y'all are young dudes. Just answer the question, or like pull a Bill Belichick and just be like, man, we got to go back to the drawing board, look at the tape, and really try to get this stuff fixed. Just use the same answer for everything. Instead, you getting your feelings in the way. Dexter Lawrence did kind of the exact same thing, not as egregious and whatnot. But now New York Giants fans are not feeling Kayvon Thibodeau, right? It's what have you done for me lately? 11 and a half sacks last season. They're like, man, Kayvon's going to take that leap, yada, yada, yada. Comes out here, has a terrible week one performance. Now they're saying he's a bust. Bro, like, what are we doing, yo? Like, I don't understand it, man. But Sam Darnold definitely dicing up this New York Giants defense in this game and looking like, man, like, I would rather have Sam Darnold at the quarterback position, which sounds really fucking crazy.
I bet you if you polled 100 fans that weren't Giants fans.
That was the key asterisk on it.
Yeah, weren't Giants fans. 100% of them would take Sam Darnold over Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and I think even before this game, that might have been a thing. In the first half, he went 10 for 10 without having an incompletion. He was 13 of 14 to end the first half, 151 yards, passer rating of 135. Finished at 19 of 24 for 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, one little fugazi interception that got tipped up at the line by Dexter Lawrence. Really good play. His first incompletion came with 2 minutes left in the first half. That dude had a really good game. So I know Minnesota Vikings fans are feeling really good about him. And let me tell you something that a Minnesota Vikings fan said to me in my mentions before we move on from this one. It was a girl who was talking to me about it, and she said the Minnesota Vikings did the right thing that the Giants should have done and didn't do, which was they cleaned house. Got rid of Danielle Hunter, allowed Kirk Cousins to go, moved on from different running backs that they had in the previous 2 years. Obviously, they're going to keep Justin Jefferson around and they drafted Jordan Addison, but they got rid of a ton of pieces. The middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. Why am I forgetting his name right now?
Leighton Vander Esch?
No, not Vander Esch. Vander Esch was drafted by them. Kendricks. He used to play for the Minnesota Vikings for like 9 years. Veteran, solid at the position.
Howie Kendricks.
Not Howie. I want to say it's I got notes on him when we get to the Cowboys game. I don't know why I can't remember his first name. But he was a decent linebacker for them. They parted ways with him as well. Instead, the Giants in 2022, which were a worse team on paper and record-wise than the Minnesota Vikings, but did end up beating them in the playoffs, decided, you know what? We feeling ourselves. We're going to run it back. Let's get Daniel Jones on this $40 million a year contract. Let's bring back Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag. They obviously gave contracts out to cornerstone pieces like Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, and Xavier McKinney was still in the picture at that time. They're looking at building upon what they did, whereas the Vikings, who had won 13 games that year, said, let's blow this shit up. And looks like they're in a better position, have a tougher schedule this year, but they come out week one and get the victory against the Giants, which, honestly, I was talking to the Beard about this off air. I expected it, but there's no way I was going to come up here week one like the Beard did for his squad and not pick the New York Giants to win the game. I think it's the only week for me to even be confident about my team this year. With you, maybe not the case. There were a couple of things in y'all game I thought that, give you guys a little bit of hope. But nonetheless, the Giants fall to 0-1. And looking at like a must-win game here in week 2 coming up, man.
Well, Thursday is going to be fun.
Oh yeah, Thursday is going to be fun and a little bit treacherous for me. I got a busy day, bro. I'm going to be zooming to DC to do something. I got a gig out there that I'm doing with Fred Yone, coming back to do the podcast, then going back to the gig. So it's definitely going to be an interesting day. And week 2, make sure y'all pull up on Thursday night. We're going to be doing the preview show here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Can we put the bubble wrap on this game? Anything else you want to talk about on this one?
No, it's a wrap. I don't think there's much else we could say.
Yeah, I'm glad to put that one behind me in the past here because that was a tough matchup here.